you'll notice that it says the Earth's equator is 24,902 miles long. What is the approximate surface area of the Earth? And it's asking us to round our answer to the nearest 1,000 square miles. So when we think about this, first we have an equator, so we need to make a plan. So the equator, we should know already, is actually the circumference of the Earth. And then it's asking us to find the surface area. So when we're thinking about a plan here, we need to go from backward planning, if you will. We need to end with surface area. And in order to get surface area, we have to have a radius. So that means that we'll have to use our circumference to find the radius. That should take you back to a few equations from the last units. So first, when we know circumference, that should bring back our formula of circumference equals pi times diameter, or circumference equals pi times the radius times 2. And that will give us the same as the diameter. So we're looking here, our circumference is 24,902, and then that should be equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So we're going to need now to go through and solve for the radius. So the first thing that we should be able to do to isolate the radius by itself is divide both sides by 2 pi. And the pi's will cancel out, the 2's will cancel out, and we'll be left on that side of the equation with just the radius. And then we plug into our handy dandy calculator. Great, so now that I have my calculator, I can go right ahead and plug in that 24,902 into my calculator. And I'm going to divide that by 2 times pi. In my head, I'm going to work that out. I'm going to use 3.14 for pi, and then I'm going to multiply that by 2. So I should get 6.28 to be able to put into my calculator. When I divide that out, it gives me an approximate example or estimate of 3,965.28. So I'm going to go ahead and round that up to 3,965. And that should be in miles. And that will give me the radius of the Earth. From there forward, remember I said that I needed to take my circumference and use that to calculate my radius. So I've done both of those. Now I just need to plug in and calculate for surface area. I'm going to rewrite this up here. So that's my radius. And I'm going to come back with my surface area formula, plug it in, and go. So you'll remember surface area equals 4 times pi times the radius squared. Was one of the formulas that we're using in this section. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the radius again for the radius of the Earth, and I should have surface area equals 4 times pi times 3965 squared. And a lot of people will wonder, well, why did you suddenly start writing those in parentheses? It was just my way of making sure that I broke the pi away from the radius squared. So again, that's easy, straightforward calculator work. I can take my calculator and I can plug in 4 times pi, and then I can take that answer and multiply it by, oops, I take that back. Let's square that first. So we should take the 3965 and square it. My calculator has a nice little square key right there, if you guys didn't see it. So that gives me an answer of 15,721,225. Right? And then I want to take that answer times 4, and then that answer times pi. It gives me roughly how many square miles are the surface area of the Earth. So I've got 19758,739.9. So roughly 197 million square miles for the surface area. Remember, it asked us to round to the nearest 1,000 square miles, so that's going to give me my thousandths place there. So I'm looking here, I'm going to look to the next number. 7 is going to round it up, so I'm going to have roughly 197,559,000 square miles. Excellent. Great, guys. We have 2 more examples to work out dealing with the volume of spheres in terms of pi. In this instance, you can see our spheres over here, and it has a radius of 6 meters, and they're asking us to find the volume in terms of pi. Should be simple and straightforward. All we need to do is plug in our volume formula and then solve accordingly. So you'll remember from your notes, volume equals, I apologize, I'll switch back out to the blue. So volume equals 4/3 times pi times the radius cubed. And if you can never remember which ones are cubed and which are square, it should be pretty straightforward. Volume are always cubic units because it takes up space, and then area are always square units because it's in a flat plane. So on this one, we plug and chug just like my math teacher used to say. 4/3 times pi times the times 6, which is our radius, raised to the power 3. So we can plug that in. As we're going through, I kind of grabbed my calculator back out over here. So I'm just going to take that 6 and raise it to the power of 3. And that gives me 216, which I can plug in there. Yikes. Got a little extra glare up there. Sorry about that. There we go. 216, that should say. And then we still need to multiply by pi. And we still need to multiply by 4/3. Now notice it tells us we can leave this in terms of pi. So really, the only things I need to do here are multiply my 216 by 4/3. So I'll take 216 and multiply it by 4, and then take that answer and divide it by 3. And that gives me an answer of 288. And the pi comes along with it. In the end, Carol always wants to make sure that we remember to put our units on there, so make sure we mark that as cubic meters. On this last problem that we're going to work out, you'll notice that the setup is just a tiny bit different. So on this one, it gives us the volume of a sphere is 5,000 cubic meters. It asks us to find the surface area to the nearest square meter. So if you notice on this one, we're at volume, and we want to go to surface area. We don't have a formula that relates surface area and volume. What we do know is that both of these in common share the radius. So if we can use our volume formula to work backward, that should give us the radius. And then we can use our radius to work forward to solve for the surface area. So let's start with the volume. Volume equals 4/3 pi times the radius cubed. Same formula as we had before. The difference being this time that we already have the volume and we're solving for the radius. So this is our unknown. Basic equation solving, you guys know that if these two are multiplied by the radius, in order to isolate the radius, we need to divide on both sides. That's kind of what I lovingly call the brother and sister rule. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. When we do that, this becomes now just calculator work. The 4/3 cancel out. The pi's cancel out. And then we're left on the right-hand side of the equation with just our radius cubed. So I'm going to go ahead in my calculator and I'm going to clear out what we had in there before. And I'm going to get a number here for this 4/3 pi. So I'm going to go ahead and take 4 divided by 3. And then I'm going to multiply that number by pi. And that gives me about 4.188. So now I can go back and take my volume and divide it by the 4.188. So 5,000 divided by 4.18. That gives me an answer of about 1,196.1. Since we're rounding here to the nearest square meter, I'm going to go ahead and round that radius off. Right there is 1,196 equals the radius cubed. Now in order to do that, to solve for the radius cubed, you guys know already that in order to get rid of a cube, you need to cube root both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and cube root both sides of these and plug that into my calculator. So I'm going to take my answer and cube root it. I accidentally did it twice. So in the end, when I take the cube root of that, I should end up with an answer around 10.6. Oops, for the radius after we cube root both sides. So after we've done this, we have taken the volume, used it to solve for the radius. So we're done with both of those steps. Now we use the radius to solve for surface area. So just like you had, trying to slide my camera down a little bit here. So just like you guys had in the last section, we can go ahead now and take our surface area formula and solve for the surface area. So surface area, you'll remember, is 4 times pi times the radius squared. Wouldn't it be funny if I messed that up? I'm just kidding, I wouldn't mess that up. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take that formula. Super straightforward. 4 times pi times our radius, which is 10.6 squared. So now, like I said before, it just becomes calculator work. I can go ahead and clear out what's in my calculator. I'm going to take 10.6 and I'm going to square that answer. And then that answer I get, I'm going to multiply that times 4, and then I'm going to multiply that times pi. And in the end, I get 1,411.9. So I'm going to go ahead and round that up to the nearest square meter, and I get 1,412. And again, those are square meters because we're talking about surface area. So we worked our way all the way up. We started with volume, we calculated the radius, and then we used that radius to calculate the surface area, and we're left with 1,412. That's all for this section. You can go ahead and start working on your homework.